Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final Big T conference special from NextGen Planners. My name is Dan Graham, and I'm here every day. Well, been here every day during this special week in NextGen Planners history, which, of course, was the Global Financial Planning Conference in association with Propulsion in South Africa and Profile Me also in South Africa as well. Thank you all for joining us for this week's series of special shows from the Global Financial Planning Conference. Throughout the show and all through this week, we've been asking for your opinions on the big topics of the week. And today, the big topic is technology-powered businesses. Now, on today's show, we've got three awesome guests. We've got, first up, Paul Hogg from EV. Then we're joined by with a very special monologue from Mr. David Ferguson at Seccl. And to finish off the week, we have an interview with Adam Carolan from NextGen Planners. So let's get straight into the show with our first guest, Mr. Paul Hogg from EV. Paul, how's things?
It's all very good, thanks, Dan, mate. You?
I'm fine. I'm good. We're recording this at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, so we're both still surprisingly alert and awake. So life's good. As we've already mentioned there, that you guys at EValue are one of our fantastic sponsors this year. So we're massively grateful. Hats off to you guys for sponsoring us. Thank you so much. I'm just interested to hear from your perspective. I already know this because I've asked you about 10 million times, but for the audience's sake, what was it about the mega conference that made you guys want to join in and support us?
Well, I think, like what I've said before and what I'll say again, is that there's a big support within the community for sort of younger advisors and people that are kind of entering into the marketplace. And I think that's really important. I think there's a huge community. The NextGen community is really fantastic and supportive. And all of the advisors that I speak to are kind of focused on client outcomes rather than products. So it's kind of it's a kind of a mindset that we agree with very much. And being part of the event in that kind of non-traditional sense, the way you guys are kind of setting up the event, it's going to be a long but exciting day.
I agree. It will be long. Yeah, but I guess we're really excited as well. Thank you so much, guys, for getting involved. It's really a pleasure to have you all on board. So now for today's show, the big topic is technology-powered businesses, which is actually going to be one of the zones at the conference. And we were just talking about this before we started recording, actually, but for so long, our profession, financial planning profession, has, I think you would probably agree, lagged behind when it comes to technology and certainly with getting different things to talk to each other. So that's probably one of the biggest frustrations that I see from people nowadays is the kind of need for this kind of rekeying data and all that kind of stuff across the different areas.
Yeah.
But how much and how optimistic are you, and how much do you think it will change over the next few years, and how much do you think will advance?
So I think because of the amount of interest in this kind of area at the moment, it will improve, definitely. I mean, you've got sort of integration hubs and things that people port into. It makes life easier. You've got guys like us that build from API and leave open API so that it is possible for other systems to talk to or be facilitated into. I talk a lot about omni-channel at the moment, and omni-channel tends to be how you may have various different ways of interacting with clients, and it's how you can get them through those various journeys and various touch points, potentially into an advisor conversation with as little repetition as possible. And that may involve several different bits of tech. But effectively, I see either lineation via APIs will improve, maybe more in kind of the hybrid digital space. So there'll be purpose-built solutions that will make that very quick. But, we see firms that are making their own back offices. So definitely, I think as the kind of, if it's correct to say, like the kind of perhaps the attitudes of the advice sort of space are changing, you're seeing advisors trying to effectively exist across the whole chain, even with their own platforms and things. So it's definitely a time for change, and we're right at the very beginning of it now.
It's good. It's quite optimistic.
Yeah, well, which is a change for me.
So, as well, I mean, we're talking about EV today, and one of the things that you guys really help with people with is aligning their client's risk profile in their financial plan, and that's something that you guys really can focus on and target, that area of financial planning.
Yeah.
So, for people in the audience who are financial planners and
Yes.
they feel like they haven't quite clicked with this area yet, or they could always leave room for improvements in this space, what would be your biggest piece of advice to the audience for getting that right, for getting that link between a risk profile and a client's financial plan?
Yeah, it's a hard one, and again, you always get this kind of give and take really between that process and that client experience too, and there is a trade-off between kind of, all right, is it part of the full digital fact find? Is it something that we do latterly? How much does it go into ESG? I think when it comes to risk mapping, which is more about the kind of attitude to risk and capacity for loss, it's just understanding the underlying metrics, and really digging into what the assumptions are, what timeframes are being used, what is the classification of risk, and what assets are being characterized. Because we do see a lot of the time, especially with firms moving into more segmentation of different demographics of clients, that they don't just have 10 types of client, so they need a risk questionnaire that can accommodate more than 10 outcomes. And I think that is something where firms potentially need to pay attention into exactly what the risk questionnaire is suggesting, and then what they use to risk map to it. Because so often risk mapping solutions have kind of been created out of necessity, but they use a very different methodology to the actual risk that's defined in the questionnaire. So there is a mismatch, and a lot of them are sort of looking backwards. So especially right now, they're still looking at what was a great market, and projecting returns into the future, which we're just not going to see again.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of you've kind of just answered. You've just said this in that answer, but to summarize, it's this kind of thing that there's more to risk than just the attitude to risk. Or I'm seeing some fantastic, financial planning firms really doing a fantastic job with risk mapping and linking it to clients' financial plans and everything like that, and really realizing the importance of risk, instead of it just being an ATRQ that someone fills out in 5 minutes and then you just go off with that. It's actually a lot more kind of nuanced than that, and there's a lot more behind it, and they're having really good conversations. There's no need really for these conversations to be ultimately boring. Risk isn't necessarily a fantastically exciting topic, but there's no need for those conversations to be boring. When you look at all aspects of risk, you can actually have some quite deep and meaningful conversations with clients as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's about facilitating the conversation and knowing what's in the assumption base enough to be able to talk about it quite happily. Because if you're able to link the suggested asset allocation to a portfolio or a set of assets, and then well, the client's got a high degree of risk tolerance, we've got them in a quite aggressive portfolio, but now we look at their objectives and their assets and their plans, but they don't have the assets they need to achieve what they want, then we need to reframe that conversation and have it again. But unless you've got the same definitions in each part of that, it's really hard to do as thorough job as possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. New way of thinking about it. It's cool. Okay, so let's just focus on EV or EValue. So I always get this wrong. I'm so sorry, Paul. Every time you tell me what to say, and every time you can guarantee that I'll always get confused.
Don't worry. This weekend I get my neck tattoo, so you'll be able to reference that the next time, right?
I think I'll probably still miss that. You might have to get it on your forehead instead.
Just grow a beard.
So you guys are known for being massively comprehensive with a huge range of different tools. ranging from risk questionnaires right through to cash flow planning and all that kind of stuff. And EV Pro is a really cool, exciting development in that area. But we're called NextGen planners. Obviously, we like to look forward. So what exciting developments have you got coming up over the next few months and maybe perhaps over the next 12 months?
Okay, so the next 12 months is quite an exciting time. There's some developments coming to EV Pro, which will enable firms not just to risk rate their proposition, which they can do now, but also actively go and seek things that fit. So look for funds, find MPS providers, look for solutions that could fulfill that particular risk profile or risk bucket. Things that have risk rated or aligned in that way. We've got two-way integrations. So we're connected to back offices, and we'll also be able to update back offices. So the API integration is two-way. So again, talking about systems that connect with each other, make sure that happens both ways rather than just one way. In the long run, towards the end of that kind of range of now to the end of 12 months, we're very much enhancing the tool set to align across all stages of a hybrid advice model. So a lot of the developments that you would see in terms of EV Pro will be links through to more digital fact finding, more in-depth ESG analysis, and sort of client triage, really. So people are able to maybe do a little bit of self interaction on a website, fill in some forms, start to understand what their situation looks like. And at the point that either they want more advice or there's a trigger or facilitation event, the data doesn't have to be rekeyed and can be passed through into other systems.
Cool. Very good. Exciting few months. That's good. I really like kind of the not self-serve, but I'm kind of verging towards there. But I really like that element. I think that's been an area that has been missing for quite some time in financial planning. And that'll be a very exciting area when it comes. So
yeah,
good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Paul. Again, thank you to EV and EValue and EV Pro and all the different names that I always confuse and always get wrong. Thank you so much to you guys for sponsoring the conference this year. We couldn't do it without you.
No problem.
But thank you again for joining me, and we'll speak very soon. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Good stuff. Thank you very much to Paul from EV there for joining us on the show today. Next up, we have a 10-minute monologue from David Ferguson.
To be a discussion about technology-based businesses, and you've obviously come an awful long way, but so we should have done, right? Because the world has changed and technology's changed enormously over the last 20 years or so. And I think feels to me that if we roll this forward another 5, 10, 20 years, there'll be enormous more prominent role for technology in this whole thing. And it's for me, it's really interesting and how big a role it actually plays. And where financial advice and financial planning came from was very much an offline business with a bit of kind of admin at the end, and the technology was just administration. Really, it wasn't really meaningful part of the customer proposition or what you're putting in people's hands, and the concepts like digital engagement just didn't, I don't think, really existed. So that whole, we think about technology-based businesses, what is the balance of offline and online in your customer proposition and how you run your business? I think that's the kind of fundamental thing, and probably unlike perhaps how it's been in the past, where people have kind of taken on bits of technology and joined them together as best they can. You've got a situation where if you actually start at the customer end and say, well, what do I really want to be delivering for my customers? What I really want to be putting in their hands, and how do I want to be really running my practice? You get a very different answer than, here's a bunch of technology that kicks around the market and we could probably assemble it a bit like this and that would kind of be all right. I think if we actually look at it total opposite end and say, what would we love to deliver here? That's a very different way of thinking about it, and I think would lead to a very different outcome in most cases. Because I don't think, if we go from a situation where you're 95% offline and 5% online to 60-40, maybe flipping the other way altogether in time to being largely a digital or online proposition, I think it becomes increasingly important not to compromise on that stuff, because the minute you are compromising on your technology and technology stack and how it hangs together, is actually the minute you're compromising on what you're delivering to your customer. And that is a fundamental compromise where you're basically saying, I'm accepting that we're not going to be as good as we could be at this. And I suspect none of you do that in an offline context, but you might have been forced to accept compromise in an online context, which I suspect is not a terribly positive or frankly enduring way to think about it. And that in itself brings new challenges, right? Because it means you've got to be thinking a bit more strategically about this stuff rather than tactically. And I think it's a pretty observable fact that not many advice businesses have significant technology capability in their business, and very few people are solely dedicated to that. And where they are in the past, maybe some of them have been kind of coding a few systems, but the whole technology strategy and thinking about those components doesn't seem to be very many people's full-time job in financial planning businesses. And I suspect that will come to change quite dramatically in the coming years. And also thinking about who you're really aligned with in pulling those components together and making this all kind of happen. Ultimately, whether you're relying on financial planning software providers, CRM systems, risk profiling platforms, whatever it is, it's important. I think these companies are all become part of the representation of your business and who you are and what you put out to customers. And I think it's quite important that you think about the role each of these participants has in your supply chain, and you front this whole thing up as your thing. And are you taking sufficient ownership of what's been delivered, and is it possible that your offline experience is just outstanding, and then someone gets a kind of third-rate client portal and it's just incredibly disappointing and devalues actually what you do offline and compromises your brand in the eyes of your customers. So I think it's really important to think about that stuff, and then also think about when I'm for whose benefit is this technology? Is this something that's actually making my customers' lives better, or my business operate more effectively so I can make my customers' lives better? That's all. Thinking that way, the technology providers in a space who are more motivated by kind of selling more stuff, where they actually get paid by fund groups and all that sort of stuff for license fees. And I'm not necessarily sure. It's not necessarily wrong, but I think you should understand where those vendors may themselves be compromised in supporting what you're trying to do. And I think that's a consideration, because ultimately you want to get a situation where you control what you're doing here. This is your proposition, is what you want to build for your customers, whatever niche or customer types you're operating in. And it's really important you control that rather than compromise it, I think. Similarly, in the advancements we've had in recent times, I don't think it's okay to accept something that's largely analog when you could have something that's purely digital. It feels to me again to be a sort of fundamental difference in the way this needs to be thought through. We've all seen in recent years the way systems interconnect, the smoothness in which that happens in some parts of our lives is materially greater than it is in some parts of this sector. And connectivity between systems and the ease of that happening, and the frictionless of the customer journey through that, I think, is a pretty massive consideration. And then obviously there's a whole thing about cost and how you manage that, and how that doesn't negatively impact what you're trying to do for the customer. There's ultimately a problem when you're overpaying for stuff, because it then re-emerges in a cost to the customer, which challenges value for money, whether that's a direct cost that the customer's bearing directly, if you like, or whether it's a cost that is being passed on to them basically through higher advice for you, because you can't get the efficiency in your practice. These are all, I think, extremely big considerations and things to think about. And there are very few truly digital financial planning businesses, and that's going to change. I suspect very substantially on a medium-term view, and I'm not sure. I don't particularly buy that everyone's going to rush to the kind of robo stuff that we saw before and people try, but everybody's recognising there's a requirement for human interaction. My kind of plea or my suggestion would be to make sure that, say, the technology piece is at least as good as the human piece, or else you kind of run the risk of undermining everything you've done on the human side by by delivering kind of substandard on the tech side. And wherever our expectations have been set, they're definitely a lot higher than they were a few years back. And kind of clunky logins or multiple logins across different systems, it's just not the way it's going to be, and it's just not going to kind of wash, I don't think, and people will have a real problem with that stuff. So yeah, I guess my sense is this is all about ownership and control, and getting comfortable with having that ownership and control, and then getting comfortable exercising that ownership and control, and realizing that this is on you to make this happen. And yeah, kind of getting the last three bits of tech that came to see you or that you used to use kind of hanging together as best you can isn't really the answer. It's actually saying, well, I need to own this strategically, just as I would think about my investment proposition, or I would think about how I do my financial planning and my reporting around about that, and my customer engagement there, even frankly my kind of marketing and lead generation. All this you really want to feel as seamless as it possibly can, and that's not really been the world we've been in. And we obviously see a whole bunch of new people entering the market now, including the business I work for. But there's lots happening in the CRM space, lots happening in the financial planning space, and it's quite interesting to see whether those new providers win, or whether the more established and legacy provider incumbents, whether they manage to adapt to survive. Because it's when you get into that whole world of connectivity, it's not simply a case of putting in place an integration. It's got to be kind of done properly, through proper APIs. And I think what we'll see happen is some of the established companies will actually find it quite hard to adapt for that world, because it probably means a complete kind of rewrite and restarting of their entire technology infrastructure, and that will create opportunities for kind of interesting market participants who've got more modern tech and more modern proposition, but maybe got no market presence right now. And I'd expect to see some of those new entrants really gain material ground in the next few years as we move more tech focused. Anyway, hopefully that's been useful, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of the event, and I'll catch you all soon, hopefully. Cheers now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to David at Seccl for that fantastic monologue. Just unleashing his thoughts onto the world. And we must say a massive thank you to the guys at Seccl for sponsoring this year's conference. As I say throughout this week, we could not put on the Speaker Influence program, and we couldn't have all of our amazing speakers without the help that we get from our sponsors who sponsor the conference. So thank you so much to Seccl, and thank you to David for that awesome monologue as well. Okay, next up, we're looking at the big topic today, which is technology-powered businesses. And to help us do this, we've got Mr. Adam Carolan from NextGen Planners. So welcome, Adam. Thank you very, very much for joining us this afternoon. So the big topic today, of course, as everyone knows who's been watching this show, is technology-powered businesses. Now, I think you would probably agree that for a long time, and perhaps just to some extent still today, our profession has lagged behind in the technology space when it comes to effective technology. Like, say, for instance, if we look at the banking sector or the banking profession, whatever you want to call it, ever since 2008, they've seen a massive kind of shift towards technology and things like that, whereas ours quite hasn't. But how optimistic are you, and how much do you think it will change over the next few years in this space?
Yeah, good question. I think the banking sector, I think some of it's seen progression. I'll give you an example. So I logged a check the other day. So I used Starling, logged a check, and I got, within 24 hours, I got a notification to say they've received my check, because I was worried about sending the check. And then the next thing, within 24 hours, it'd been paid into my banking. So that was unbelievable. So that was great. So Starling were amazing, but I'm hearing quite negative things about other banks. But with our sector, I think the technology companies haven't kept pace with what we're doing in our businesses, which is we've moved from a transactional world in financial planning to a more regular communication world, more regular service. So the big issue that I see in the sector, is the technology companies need to understand the business and understand the sector a bit more in terms of the way it's evolved. So yeah, I'm optimistic. but they need to speak to financial planners more, understand their businesses a lot more, understand the pain points in financial planning businesses.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, to be honest, and I think I completely agree because proper financial planning is still relatively young. Like when we think about it, maybe only 10, 20 years old in some cases. It's still not practiced by a lot of people today. I would probably argue as well. So therefore, I think there's another argument here which I heard from Ray Adams at CashCalc a while ago, which is that perhaps this lag is due to the fact that our market is quite small. So the financial advice market, as in the intermediary market, is pretty small. So therefore, the profits will not be as big as some technology companies would imagine.
It's a great argument. I think what Ray's done with CashCalc is absolutely brilliant for our sector, and that is one of the market leaders, I think, in terms of bringing on the sector. But it's not just small; it's fragmented. So you've got lots of independent financial planners, a cottage industry, as people call it. So it becomes quite difficult to make it a commercial thing, I think, for a lot of technology companies. So I often look at what's happening in the US and very enviously say that technology would be amazing over here. So you and I have always talked about certain CRMs in the US, Dan. But the problem is they look at the UK, they look at the market, we're more highly regulated, and we're probably harder to deal with. So it's not very easy from a commercial point of view. Having said that, there's definitely more investment coming into the sector, in platforms, in back offices, CRMs, in financial planning tools, which is great. So more investment, I think, is going to lead to better development and better tools.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So this is the next question is a one where we can think big. Okay. So I think we'll say utopian world. And by the way, utopian means perfect world. So as in where we had good technology in financial planning and it worked in every single financial planning firm as it should. What do you think it would actually look like? And this answer could go on for years in reality, but on this, to summarize, what do you think that would look like in a perfect world? What would the best technology look like?
Shall I tell you what I would want from the technology?
Yeah,
I don't think is there at the moment. Would that help?
Yeah, I think that would probably work.
I think a big issue we have in the sector is that regular communication, regular service. So I think I would want constant communication with the client. I'd want real data, lifetime data. So a big issue with a lot of financial planning tools at the moment is the moment you go out of the room, the data's out of date because we've got legacy products. So that's really difficult. I'd want the client to be able to collaborate on their plans because collaboration is absolutely crucial. I'd want them to be able to dip into their plan, do different scenarios, and that feedback to me. I want it to be secure. I think all these are almost like hygiene factors, but are not always there in financial planning. So if you're in the design and marketing world, Dan, you spend time in that, but the collaboration and project management tools that world have are incredible, so when people do websites and they're collaborating on websites and you're going back and forth, I want to see some of that thinking brought into our world in terms of collaborating with clients and sharing data. I think some of that is the technology company's fault, but a lot of it is the legacy providers is just so difficult to deal with. More project management type tools in the market I want to see.
That's interesting because there's something in the States at the moment as well, which is really cool that they're really targeting this. I mean, we always say, don't we, that they're a bit more advanced and a bit ahead of us. But how many times have you had clients ask you when they've seen a cash flow plan, they've said, oh, this is amazing. Can I get access to these pretty colors and mess around with this myself at home and things like that? And we always used to have to say no, because there's nothing at the moment that allows people to do that. But if we could have that, I suppose that would go a long way to making that collaborative relationship better.
Yeah, and fundamentally, if I'm paying a financial planner, if I put my client head on, I want to know what you're doing, and I want to know what I have to do. What are my action steps? What's my action list? And let me know when something's ticked off, or let me know when I've progressed. So I think we're very guilty in this profession of not telling people if they progressed or not. It's all about a snapshot of their financial plan.
Yeah, I agree. So when there's a lot of people who are launching their financial planning firms, which is great, and we're seeing a really good kind of transformation in that area, and a lot of people who are actually going out their comfort zone and doing it, which is brilliant. And one of the things that they really need to think about, and one of the things which they do think about, which is good, is their tech stack, obviously. So I think it's commonly known, isn't it, that you need to get it right from the start. It's no good putting into bad technology and then having to change it 2 years down the line because it doesn't work for you. It's better to get it right from the very beginning. So for those who are thinking of who are watching this and they're thinking of launching their own business, what quick advice would you give them for thinking about their tech stack when they're launching their business?
Yeah, there's so much advice. So dead simple. Think about your processes first. Go and find tech that fits your processes. So a lot of people don't realize what they can probably get out of their Office 365 license, business license. I talk about that a lot. SharePoint can be used. You've got your email. You've got everything within that. 12, 13 quid a month. So see what you can get out of that, because cost is important. Try and build your process, or think about your process for the tech. Speak to other planners that have built and gone through that process is really important, because technology, especially in financial planning, like any sector, is a sales-led industry. So it's unregulated. All they're trying to get is bums on seats. They're trying to get people to use their technology. So you need to speak to the actual users and take your time and do the research in the market. So that's really important. So I would argue that tech is important, but not the be all and end all. Your tech stack's not the be all and end all in the first year. Ease yourself into it without going crazy with a massive spend.
Yeah, I think as well, I think your point about checking what other people have done and learning from people is good, but I think there's a fine line between that and comparing yourself to others. So if someone's got a perfect tech stack, they've probably built that over the course of 10, 15 years in some cases, a lot of more established firms. So you shouldn't expect to get it right. I mean, you could get it right from day one, but you shouldn't expect for that to just happen from day one.
And the way that they deal with clients or their processes might be different to what you're planning as well. So I think it's important to understand what business, what kind of business you want to build.
I think that comes back into your point at the start when you said about, build technology around your processes and make sure you've got them right first. Yeah. Okay. Last question then. So, I feel really excited about technology in financial planning at the moment, because there's some cool things coming out, and there's a lot of it's very popular. Like in our community, for instance, it's one of the most popular channels because people are talking about it all the time. But which ones or what exciting developments specifically are you most excited about over the next couple of years and months as well?
Yeah, I tell you what, I think, some of the stuff that you've been looking at in terms of the suitability reports, some of the video based stuff, I think is really exciting. I mean, planners have to lead this, by the way. I think planners have to say we're gonna do this and adopt it. Very much the same when COVID hit, and obviously we're on Zoom, we're on a virtual platform now. A lot of businesses had to change to a virtual platform from a physical platform. So that kind of happened, very quickly. But I think the real issue we have in our sector that needs solving is real-time data. So this open banking and API stuff, I think they call it the pensions dashboard. That kind of stuff needs to happen, because we need to be able to have real-time data with clients to understand what investments they've got, what pensions they've got, because we spend too much time, fact finding and not enough time with clients. That's the big issue.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Okay, fantastic. Well, that sums up our time with you this afternoon, Adam. Thank you very, very much for coming on. And thank you for all the work this week putting the conference together as well.
Cheers, mate. Take care, Dan.
So that's it. That is it. The big T is over, and this week is over as well. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you for being our loyal audience this week and for watching along with us as we've taken this journey in financial planning. Thank you to today's guests. Of course, we had Paul Hogg from EV. We had David Ferguson with that brilliant monologue from Seccl. And of course, to Adam just then as well from NextGen Planners. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of our Big T guests this week. So we've had Claire Evans, Rebecca Kowalski, Becca Timmins, Rizan Oosthuizen, Olivia Parnell, Mel Holman, Ed Carey, Millie Thornton, Gavin Brown, Andre Costa, Yasmina Sayadaten, and of course today's guest for making this week extra special. I'm quite sad actually that this show is now over, but it's been a brilliant week. We've really enjoyed the Global Financial Planning Conference. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you to everyone who spoke. Thank you to all of our amazing sponsors. And of course, thank you to you guys for watching at home as well. We hope you have a brilliant weekend. We'll be back very, very soon with some more content. And believe me, this is just the beginning. So thank you for watching as always. And we hope to see you all very, very soon.